We got the sad music on this edition of Miami Total Football Radio, the show. And we have a special guest in the house. I am Franco Panizo, your usual co host here. A former member of Miami Total Football Radio, the show, joins us for a very special edition. Not with the tone that Inter Miami fans would probably like, because obviously Inter Miami is eliminated from the Concacaf Champions Cup after a 3-1 defeat to the Vancouver Whitecaps on Wednesday. Simon, I think maybe the last time you and I did a podcast together about Inter Miami, the tone was completely different. Inter Miami had just won the League's Cup. They had just lifted their first trophy in franchise history. This time, we have to talk about the disappointment, the state of the project, Lionel Messi's influence, all of the good stuff. If you guys don't know Simon Evans, you should know Simon Evans. Simon and I go way back. We won't give you the whole breakdown of everything, but Simon is a veteran reporter of the beautiful game. English, of course, despite his 90 Italia and brick wall background, which is fantastic. Much different than the last time we saw you here. But Simon, first off, how are you? Welcome back to your casa.
Thank you. Yeah, no, good to be back. Yeah, it seems a long time since Nashville, wasn't it? Yeah. We'll always have Nashville.
We were in a Airbnb/church type of thing. I don't even remember what it was.
It was a converted church, like hostel kind of place, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was. You let me
with a recording studio.
Yes, with a recording studio. We did the pod there together side by side before we left it to the airport, which then I left to go party with friends that I didn't know were in town. Coincidentally, that had nothing to do with Inter Miami before my flight. So yeah, those good times. Follow Simon Evans on Twitter. Follow his work. Simon does a hell of a job. A historian of the game. He's earned his stripes. And Simon and I go way back. So when I was a wee lad. But Simon, enough with the pleasantries. We have to get to the important stuff because there's a lot of important stuff to talk about. And we want to try to, again, I've been trying, I said it on the last pod, I want to try to condense the shows because we go very long. Jose and Andrea and myself, we talk a lot. Our new co-host, Alonso Contreras, also talks a lot. So we've been trying to tighten it up. We're going to do it with you. So before we dive into the game, the X's and O's, I think we should do this by jumping into, bigger picture first of
okay,
where we're at with this team, where we're at with this project. Obviously, you guys see the title of this week's show. And I think we should start there because it's clear that Lionel Messi's time here is equivalent with this being his project. He's not just the star player that's here to score goals and make assists. He has a tremendous influence on what's going on, not only on the field, but off the field as well. And that's not overstating it. Simon, I know you have plenty of anecdotes, plenty of nuggets you can share about, Messi's influence and the overall state of Inter Miami, how things have changed, behind the scenes. And I'll just start by saying, look, you can begin by looking no further than the head coach, Javier Mascherano, who is Messi's friend, an unproven head coach, an experienced head coach, had never coached a club team before. He gets this job, which is a very important job in at least North American soccer, North American football. You have Guillermo Hoyos, and for a lot of you who may not know who Guillermo Hoyos is, he helped coach Lionel Messi during his younger years. He was with Inter Miami when Messi arrived, and he is now as of this season, although it has not been officially announced by Inter Miami, and as you can see here by the graphic, via The Athletic, he is now the sporting director. So he makes a lot of the decisions with regards to the roster. Here's another little graphic. Messi called him his footballing father back in 2010, talking about Guillermo Hoyos. So you've got a friend as the head coach, a footballing father as the sporting director, And then the other designated players, the other well-paid players on a roster in a league where there is a salary cap, those rosters, that money goes to Messi's former teammates and, well, yes, coincidentally, his friends. So this whole project is centered around Messi. So if it succeeds, it'll be because of Messi. If it fails, it'll be because of Messi. Last night, they fell short. They failed in their goal of winning the Concacaf Champions Cup. Simon, what can you say about the state of the project today after the latest big disappointment from Lionel Messi and Inter Miami?
Well, I think what last night did was it exposed the project for the weaknesses and the mistakes that have been made with pretty much from the moment Messi stepped into Miami, in my opinion. Because let's just step away from it a little bit and imagine that they'd taken a different route, right? Because all these things that have happened might not have happened had they taken a different route, right? Most clubs in Major League Soccer have a sporting director, a director of football, director of soccer. They all have different job titles, same role, yeah? Inter Miami had one of those people. He was pretty well respected around Major League Soccer circles. Chris Henderson, right? Chris Henderson's job was to, big part of it was to guide the recruitment and go and look for deals and manage the roster. Why did Chris Henderson leave the club? We don't know definitively. Everyone says it was mutual consent, blah, 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 blah. But, it's fair to assume that the Argentinian takeover of Inter Miami, because that's what it's effectively been, didn't have room for someone like Chris Henderson, right? Didn't have room for some of the coaches that were connected maybe to him or had worked previously with Phil Neville or Jason Kreis or people around the club who weren't part of an Argentinian influx into the club. What would Chris Henderson have done? Would he have gone signing journeyman players from the Argentinian league? Would he have been signing older players? We don't know, but there's every chance he would have been signing players who were maybe younger, maybe MLS prospects, maybe trying to build out a different kind of team. And my point above all with this is to say that would have been extremely difficult to manage, wouldn't it? That relationship between Chris Henderson and Messi's entourage, there would have been a tension there because they wouldn't have seen eye to eye on stuff. Chris Henderson might have said, you know what, there's a guy I really like at Seattle who could do a job for us in centre midfield. And I get the feeling that the voices might have come back in an Argentinian accent saying, forget about it. We know a better guy. We can bring somebody in, a better guy. It would have been extremely difficult to manage. But you know what? That's what big clubs do. Even the biggest clubs, the Real Madrids, the Barcelonas, the Manchester Cities, these clubs, they have those tensions there. Don't think for 1 minute that everyone's on the same page as Pep Guardiola at Manchester City, especially when it comes to things like recruitment. They aren't. But you manage that tension. You manage those relationships. You find a way to make that tension be a creative positive in some way. You deal with it. And you build out the kind of club that you want for the long term. And that's not happened, has it? It's not happened. I mean, imagine this team. If they hadn't have chosen the path, which now has been exposed, of surrounding Messi with old players and slow players and players who can't cover distances for 90 minutes. Imagine they'd gone and said, you know what? Diego Gomez is the kind of signing we need. That's what we need. We need young guys who are hungry, who want to progress, who want to learn from being around Messi. We're going to surround Messi with young talent. Imagine what 2 or 3 years that would have been, yeah? They run, they get better, they improve, they would look. I mean, any 20-year-old footballer with talent, the chance to play with Messi would have been fantastic, no? They would have. And then when Messi leaves, you've got something to continue. You've got something that's developing, that's going somewhere, that's got some momentum. Now when Messi leaves, whether it's at the end of this season or it's after a 1-year extension, we will see. Now when he leaves, you're going to have to completely rebuild the whole thing. And not just the team. You're going to have to rebuild the whole club. So that's where we are.
It's not in a good state because they want to be competitive, right? For at least the regional and domestic trophies. Last year, they fell short in the playoffs to the 9th seed Atlanta United. This year, they fall well short in the semifinals against Vancouver Whitecaps. They were beaten 5-1 on aggregate.
Which was a fair result. That was a fair result.
It was definitely a fair result. It was not an unkind scoreline over the two matches. But Simon, you touch on Messi's impact and the influence and the roster construction. I mean, probably, right, the selling point initially was that they were going to give him a lot of what he wanted, that they were going to appease him. But now, as time has gone on, I think there's probably a moment, and I don't know when that moment was, but there was probably a moment where they needed to pump the brakes on that. Now, there's no denying that Messi's the cash cow, not only in Inter Miami, but in Major League Soccer. So there's going to be an emphasis from within the organizations to give him what he wants, to make him happy so that he sticks around longer and continues to make money for the team and the league. I don't think that, that anyone could deny that as something that both of those entities would want. But I think as the team, there has to be a fine line. And at some point you have to pump the brakes and say no. And like you said, manage the tension, manage maybe some unhappiness with regards to a decision being made. And you go on with that. Because if you can't just give Messi everything he wants. Messi is a fantastic footballer, a fantastic player. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's a fantastic visionary for how a team should be built.
No one ever thought that Messi would be a coach after he finished playing. He's quite a reserved guy. He's not a demonstrative guy. You don't feel that Messi would if the Inter Miami thing never happened, you can't really picture Messi being coach of Barcelona or technical director of Barcelona or a director general at Barcelona or anything. No one really thought he had any interest in those kind of off the field roles. I think most people presumed Messi was going to play, enjoy playing, do his thing, and then have a really nice retirement with his family. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what we would have seen. How we would have probably seen it happening, right?
And now he seems to be involved in all manner of things at Inter Miami, or if not directly him, through his entourage and his people and his appointments. Yeah, I don't think anyone denies that anymore.
For the listeners that listen to this after the show goes live, and for the viewers, we're not sitting here saying that he's sitting in a boardroom saying, "Let's sign Chelo Weigand, let's sign Federico Redondo," but he has influence in the people that are hired to make these decisions, and Mascherano is probably the biggest public-facing one, right? This is Phil Neville 2.0. Phil Neville, when he got here, didn't have the credentials to lead this organization. But because of his ties to David Beckham, he was given that role, given that job, despite not being ready for the moment, perhaps. It's the same thing here with Mascherano. Mascherano, you can see that he's a young head coach. You can see that he's making mistakes. And that's normal for a young head coach. No head coach is perfect, not even the most seasoned veteran. But especially a young head coach, just like a young player, is going to make mistakes. Is that what this organization needs at this point in time when they're trying to compete for bigger and better things? When they're trying to, on the face of it, from a sporting aspect, maximize Messi's time here, trying to win as many trophies as possible? Right now they have a Leagues Cup and they have a Supporters Shield. Is that a good enough haul for 2 seasons or a season and a half? I don't know how you want to look at it because it's been here 2 years. Is that enough?
It's not even about trophies at this stage, I don't think, after last night. I think that's what changed last night, to be honest. Because something did change, I think, last night. You could feel it in the air around the stadium, couldn't you? That this wasn't just a normal defeat. That was like a big statement about what's going on at this club. And it exposed, I think, a lot of things. And I think, to cut to the chase, Franco, something needs to happen at that club which it needs to be normalized again in some way. And I think that it's not normal to have a situation where one player and his entourage have this level of influence, even when it's someone as enormous in status as Lionel Messi. What needs to happen is there is a guy at that club who has put his heart and soul into building that club and put an awful lot of money into it, and he's still pumping money into building a big, bright, shiny new stadium near the airport in Miami. Jorge Mas has built this club up with the help of other people and partners and David Beckham and his brother and other people, but fundamentally he's driven that project, right?
Yes.
And he's lost control of the club. He's lost control of his own club, and he has to take back control. If Inter Miami is to get things sorted, and we can talk about what that means, what needs to be sorted, he has to be the man making the decisions. Not we spoke to Leo and he thought this guy was a great coach, so we're going with him. No, he's got to be the guy. He leads. It's his club. He needs to restore control.
The problem there, Simon, that I see is that Jorge Mas and his foundation isn't really a soccer person, right? He's a soccer owner. He's gotten heavily invested, heavily involved, but his origins aren't football.
I'm not
His
saying make him
origins-
sporting director. I'm saying he decides who the sporting director
Sure.
is. That's
Sure.
what I'm saying.
But when he enters this new world that is football, that is the beautiful game, where there's so many players internationally, I'm not talking about players on the field, I'm talking about marquee players in terms of big decisions being made. And then he comes across Messi and his entourage, which carry a lot of weight because of who Messi is.
Right.
I mean, does he have the authority to tell them no? I mean, he could, right? He's the one paying the bills.
No, he should have. That's absolutely the point.
But it depends on his personality. If his personality is like, you know what, I need to make money while also trying to win, then I will give him whatever he wants. Listen, it's not the first time. It's probably not going to be the last time in any sport that we see a star player, superstar player, carry their weight and use that to make decisions that off the field.
How often does it end well? How often does that end well?
Well, we've seen it with LeBron James, right? That's one of the biggest examples here stateside, right? The LA Lakers drafted his son. I mean, that's not a coincidence, right? So it's not uncommon or completely uncommon, but there has to be a fine line that you draw at some point. And I don't think that Inter Miami has drawn that line. I don't think Jorge Mas, and David Beckham have drawn that line. Look,
that's what needs to happen. That's
there
what
was
needs
a
to
tweet,
happen.
and I want to ask you this before we dive into the game. I tweeted this today. Our old colleague, the late and great Grant Wall, may he rest in peace, wrote a book a couple of decades ago, if I'm not mistaken now, or maybe a decade and a half ago, about the Beckham experiment and David Beckham's time with the LA Galaxy when he arrived to Major League Soccer as the superstar celebrity. And the book is fascinating. If you haven't read it, you just
Great
recently
book.
started following MLS. It is a fantastic book. I would strongly recommend you pick it up or borrow it from somebody and read it because it's fascinating in terms of the insight into the dynamics of a professional sports team, a professional soccer team in MLS. It's great. It's a lot of great anecdotes. One of the biggest takeaways was that David Beckham threw around his weight early on in the beginning years, and he influenced a lot of the team dynamics, a lot of the decisions. He ended up taking the captaincy from Landon Donovan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The team was competitive, but they did not win trophies until that line in the sand was drawn where they were, all right, enough. We want to make the most of this from a sporting aspect or a sporting stance, then we need to start making some decisions. When Bruce Arena ended up getting in place as the head coach, things changed. Beckham had not as much influence, still had influence, but not as much influence. And then the LA Galaxy started winning trophies and being the team that maximized its potential and that got to the end of the year with the family photos and the trophy photos and the confetti and the MLS Cup parties. And I think something similar has to happen with Inter Miami. That it hasn't happened with Beckham being one of the owners. I mean, history repeats itself here, Simon. I mean, what does that tell you that this can happen again? Shouldn't Beckham have been the one to be like, hey, I know from personal experience that we can't have a celebrity player who we give too much to. I know from firsthand experience, because it happened to me. I know that for us to be competitive, we just can't give in to every demand. Shouldn't that have happened?
Beckham's influence was there. There's absolutely no doubt, and you're right. Grant's book explains that very well and illustrates it. But he was nowhere near the scale of what's going on at Inter Miami, right?
Correct.
But
even more so, shouldn't he have made that point to Jorge and Jose Mas? We need to manage this.
I think if I was to be generous to both Beckham and Jorge Mas, I would say this: they had to court Messi for 2 years, right?
Yes.
They had to appeal to him, to assuage him, to make him feel comfortable about the idea of coming to MLS, to coming to Miami. Yes, we'll do this for you. Yes, we'll do that for you. Dealing with going through his father, flying out to Qatar, sitting, all that kind of stuff. And they never got out of that mode. That's great when you're trying to persuade someone like Messi to come and play for your team. But once he's in the door, there should be different rules then. You've signed a contract. Now there's different rules, right? You're here. We're going to keep you happy.
Now they have to re-sign him, Simon. Now they're trying to re-sign him. So now they're I feel like this year, a lot of
what do you think about that? Let's get real on that one. Do you think they should?
Should they re-sign him? Yes, they should re-sign him for another year, but not with the movement as it is today. They need to take some of that control back. They need to take a little bit more of the planning but I don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think they're going to wrestle that control back from Messi and his entourage. So we know that Messi's dad is his representative, su representante, his agent, and Messi's dad is around the facility and has been. The inner circle, Messi's inner circle, has a tremendous influence on what is happening here.
How many people are into Miami? How many people in what, with all due respect, could be considered relatively minor roles in a soccer club owe their position to some degree of patronage from the ruling elite within the club? Let's put it, the Messi faction. How many people in jobs that are people would not believe? I don't want to name people, but there are people who've had jobs in pretty trivial roles because somebody said give them a job.
I jokingly tell colleagues that the La Familia name that they constantly drop, that permeates through to hires and organizational decisions. And I think that there's no denying that. It's been part of Inter Miami's short history, the cronyism or the nepotism.
It was happening even before Messi arrived.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In order to persuade, they thought that was a way to persuade Messi to come, was to hire certain people into certain roles.
So I get it, and I want to be fair to the Inter Miami owners. I get it if that was your initial package, your initial presentation to sell Messi to come here, in addition to all the other things that had to be sold.
Exactly, yeah.
I get that.
Enough. Yeah, fair.
But at some point, you guys are the owners. At some point, you guys need to hire people to make decisions that are best for the team in the short, medium, and long term. And right now, I don't think the decisions that are being made are in the best interest for this team in the short term, medium term, or long term. Again, Mascherano, to me, should not be the head coach of this team. For what they aspire to be, he didn't have the credentials. He didn't have the resume. Yes, he's been a fantastic player, but he's not a proven coach. The Tata Martino hire made sense. He's won in MLS. He has experience in MLS. He's coached at the highest levels, mixed results as a head coach at those levels, but he has that experience.
Right.
Mascherano didn't have any of that. Why is he here? He's here because of Messi. He's here because of El Diez. All the same, Simon, back to Beckham, it's just mind-boggling to me that I know he could just, the only thing maybe he can do is give him that advice. But to me, it says something that either has the inability to learn from his mistakes in the past, or maybe he just doesn't have that much influence behind the scenes. Maybe he's just the face, and he can input his opinion and his 2 cents here and there. But at the end of the day, it's Jorge Mas's shots that are being called.
Yeah, it is. And I think Beckham, if you look at Beckham's personality and the roles he's had in different things in the past, He's a great guy for smoothing things over. He's a guy for getting things done. If you were launching a bid for Miami to be a host city for a tournament or something like that, Beckham would be fantastic. He works a room very, very well. Is he the guy to go in there and make the difficult decisions and say, sorry, we need a new direction here? No, that's not Beckham. Beckham is like, things are going great and they're going to be better. You know, that's the Beckham modus operandi.
I mean, maybe he did that after the first year because that's when Phil Neville was appointed head coach. Maybe they gave him some leeway there. But again, Jorge Mas and Jose Mas were learning the sport at that point. They were still learning the business of the sport, and they were still learning the sport itself. So maybe in that essence,
I would hope that Jorge Mas, like you say, he's not a soccer player, he's not a football guy.
Simon, if I could ask you a question, in Europe, right? And again, it's football is so established that you have your power players everywhere. But generally speaking, where does the concentration of big business in football happen in Europe?
What do you mean?
England. Like if the coaches are English, like what dominates is English football, right? Because the history, the tradition.
Oh, the Premier League.
The Premier League, English coaches, English commentators. I mean, why here in the U.S. do we hear a lot of English commentators? Maybe not, I don't know, German commentators or, England has a foundation. And guess what? In South America, Argentina has that foundation. The coaches in, a lot of the South American national teams are Argentinian, the head coaches. I mean, Argentina has that type of influence because they have the history, because they have the know-how, they have the resources. So because of that, I could see the same thing happening here where Jorge Mas is like, maybe I don't know as much as I would like to know, so I'm going to lean on guys that have the resumes that say that they do know, and that's Messi and his entourage. I could see that being the case here.
I have no problem with him leaning on people for advice. That makes perfect sense for an owner of a club who doesn't have decades of being involved in the game. He should lean on some different people then. That's what I'm saying. Because if this is what he's been advised, what we saw last night, those players, that roster, not only the ones that have come in, but the guys who have gone out. Because don't tell me Robert Taylor wouldn't have been a useful part of that squad last night. Running his socks off, putting the effort in. Don't tell me Ian Frey wouldn't have done a job at right back. Yeah? Or Bright in midfield and so on. There's loads of other things we could talk about. That team is deliberately older than it needs to be because of decisions that have been made within the roster that's been created, which is already too old. But he should have... I would want Jorge Mas. Fine, if he's going to have an advisor, somebody giving him advice and suggestions, absolutely he needs that. If that's not going to be David Beckham and he travels the world and does lots of other things, he's probably not his role. Bring somebody else in who's not Argentinian, who has nothing to do with this, but who can look at it and say, you know what? Actually, 9 out of 10 people who would look at that team would say, too old, too slow. You need to get younger and faster and stronger.
So let's.
You don't need to be a soccer expert to see that. Anyone who watched that game last night could see that, no?
Let's dive into it. Let's dive into the game. You've touched on the bigger picture. Let's go into the game. Inter Miami was down 2-0 after the first leg in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. They lost to BC Place the week prior. Now they come back to South Florida for the return leg this past Wednesday night. Chase Stadium, a nice night, no rain, nice night. Inter Miami gets an early goal, right? They needed 2 to stay alive, and they get an early goal. It's looking very possible. They start creating chances, but so does Vancouver. Now, neither side could put the ball into the back of the net again in the first half. Neither team could finish the opportunities that they had. So Inter Miami goes into the break 1-0 up. Second half is a completely different story. Vancouver, whether it was adjustments, whether it's mistakes, whether it's lapses, whatever you want to call it, whether it's fatigue, Inter Miami crumbles in the opening minutes of the second half. They give up 2 goals in quick succession. That pretty much all but finished the series because at that point they were down, 4-1 on aggregate. They needed to score another 4 goals to win 5-4 to be able to advance to the final. It was a tall task, but from that point forward, it was a broken game. You could see that Inter Miami was split into two. There was 5 guys defending, 4 guys attacking, one guy that was off doing whatever he wanted to do. It wasn't a pretty game. And if Inter Miami wants to compete at the highest levels regionally, last night isn't good enough. We can talk about the tactics, we can talk about the performances, but just in general, to your point, the team is very talented, in my opinion, right? They're very talented. Jordi Alba, super talented. Sergio Busquets, super talented. Luis Suarez not in the best run of form, but he's very talented. Lionel Messi, of course, extremely, extremely talented. Muy talentoso. But this league still, despite its technical advances each year, is still a league where physicality and physical components still reign supreme, right? A lot of running, a lot of hard work, a lot of transition. Everyone talks about the transitional play when they get here from abroad, whether it's Europe or South America. There has to be a lot of energy, a lot of effort, strength, winning 50-50s. It's still a league that prizes those attributes. It's still very much built on those attributes. And like you said, Inter Miami, with its very 4 technical stars that are probably a cut above most players in this league in terms of technique, but you lose a lot from the physical aspect. And if you look at the whole overall roster, like you said, they don't have an abundance of physical qualities because they've prioritized the Latin American style players who maybe aren't the biggest, aren't the tallest, aren't the strongest. But in MLS, you need some of that. You need that. Maybe Chris Henderson, if he was here, he would have signed some players that were a little bit more energetic in the midfield, that can track back more and break things up like Yannick Bright does when he's in there. Because Redondo's not going to cover a lot of ground. Busquets is not going to cover a lot of ground. So when you lose the ball in transition, who's coming back to make the defensive plays? You have your backline obviously in position, you would hope, but who's helping them? Who's helping them put out those fires? I agree with you. This team is limited in the physical aspect, and in Major League Soccer, unless you're superbly, exceptionally well technically and tactically, it's going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, I mean, and physically, not just in the sense of being muscular and getting around and making challenges and stuff, but I mean, Vancouver, let's give them some credit. Like, they weren't that kind of like physical hard team. They won that game convincingly because they moved the ball and moved their men around much quicker, didn't they? Like when they went out to the wide areas, or they played it through wide through the middle and laid it off to the two wide players who cut into the middle, played like Liverpool sort of system on that front line, didn't they? That's the kind of team that we were used to seeing it. Shouldn't be our left back anymore, keeping further up the pitch. I was saying that to somebody this afternoon. They should give him a number 11 shirt and just forget about the left back part, because he's great in that final third, but he's not running back. He's not playing left back, is he? So
Simon is reading a comment for the listeners that listen to this after the fact, don't watch. He's reading a comment from the comment section from Bruni Sense that says, Jordi shouldn't be our left back anymore. Keep him further up the pitch. But Simon.
Let me just make one point about physicality and stuff. That kind of player that you're talking about, right? We saw last night Greg Berhalter's son, Sebastian, playing in midfield. I thought he had a very good game. Over the 2 legs, I thought he was probably man of the series in some ways, yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Number of
100%.
assists, goals,
100%.
really got around the field. Great performances. If he'd have been at Inter Miami when Messi came into the club, do you think he'd still be here now? Because I reckon he'd be playing for San Jose Earthquakes or someone.
It's a fair question. They probably
it's hypothetical.
They probably would have replaced him with some journeyman Argentine youngster in the first division in Argentina. He probably wouldn't have had a place in this team, right? Just like Robert Taylor, who's a talented player, didn't have a place in this team. Leo Campana, last year he was a super sub, spot starter, but didn't have a defined starting role with this team. So I'm with you there. But to me, right, like you saw the counterattack, you saw the transitions. Vancouver, yes, they moved very well. the way that their front line found the spaces that Inter Miami left behind and left exposed because they were pushing numbers forward from the start. But the speed gave Inter Miami fits. The speed, a physical quality gave Inter Miami fits, especially on the wings. And that's what Vancouver does well. So credit to Vancouver. They played a hell of a series. It was tactically well drilled. They stuck with it. They fought through. They battled for every 50-50. They never made it easy for Inter Miami. And you can look at the stat line. Inter Miami scores 1 goal over 2 matches. 1 goal. And this is with the superstar duo of Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez. That duo finishes with 0 goals and 1 assist over 2 games. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. Everyone wants to point the finger at the defense because the defense gives up goals. Well, guess what? The defense doesn't get paid $50 million. The defense aren't players with the name, power, and the career trajectory that Suarez and Messi have. And we know Suarez is in a bad run of form. And it's on Mascherano that, he hasn't found a solution to either get him going or to sit him. But they should have done better. Suarez is the one that actually gets the assist. Messi feeds him. Nice pass in between lines to Suarez there in the opening minutes. And then he feeds Jordi Alba for the finish down the left. A good pass, but that's just not enough over 2 games from your star duo that's supposed to be the goal scorers, the difference makers in the final third.
Let's get real about Suarez for a minute. Yeah. I mean, last year he surpassed, I think, most expectations. 20 goals in MLS, goals more in other competitions. For a guy who came in from the Brazil Championship, where people were surprised he scored as many goals as he did in Brazil at that stage of his career, and then does it again in MLS, fantastic achievement, right? When I first saw Suarez the first game or two, I didn't expect that, and he really worked out well. But this is a different Suarez this season. He looks like he's really gone over the hill now, I'm afraid.
There was one play in the second half where he gets a decent look in the box and he takes 1 touch too many. Where normally a confident Luis Suarez takes the shot on the second touch. Lethal.
The legs
but yet it just doesn't look like last year's Suarez.
And that's a difficult conversation to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why is it difficult, Simon? Why is it a difficult conversation?
It's a difficult conversation to have because I think even if you didn't have the whole situation of who's running the club and all that kind of stuff.
That's 100% part of it, right? That's 100%.
Of course it is.
That's why he's still starting.
It's always a difficult conversation when a great player, and Luis Suarez has been a great, great player, when they get to the end, it's a difficult conversation for any coach to go up to him and go, you know what? We're probably going to use you maybe off the bench for 10 minutes at the end to come on and see if you can get us a goal, okay? Because the player knows what that means. It means you're finished. Yeah. And it's difficult to say that. And it should be done in a respectful way and all the rest of it. And I want to try and be respectful as well because I think he's been a fantastic player over a very, very long career. But
Simon, can they do that? Is Mascherano going to sit there and have that conversation with his former teammate, friend? Is he going to sit down and be like, you know what? You are not the guy up top anymore.
If he isn't, that's a big problem, isn't it? And we suspect he probably isn't.
Do you see that happening? Do you envision that happening?
No, this is why I go back to my point. Jorge Mas needs to take control of this football club again. It's his club. He needs to get control of it. And if nobody's having that difficult conversation, I'm not suggesting Jorge Mas is the one who determines when, how much time Suarez gets on the field at this stage with his contract. But he needs to put people in charge who can have those difficult conversations, who haven't been in the dressing room with him as a player for like the best part of a decade, for starters.
Right, because Mascherano, as much as he's the head coach now, he's essentially been Messi, Suarez's, Busquets, and Jordi Alba's peer, right? He's been their peer. Now he's in this head coaching position, but he still has that relationship with them, that peer relationship with them.
Difficult.
So it's definitely a difficult dynamic. It's definitely tough. And I think, look, I agree with you that I think something comes out of last night. I think Inter Miami will have to make changes, whether it's tactically, personnel. Something's going to change, I think, from this point forward, because I don't think they can continue to trot out the same thing with the goals that they want to reach, with how we've been seeing them play. I don't know what that is. We could talk about what we think it could be, but I think something does change. All that said, a lot of people want to point the fingers at Tadeo Allende, to Lasco Segovia for not performing, Tadeo Allende not finishing, and they all shoulder their share of the responsibility. But to me, it goes to your two guys up top to start, because those are the money men. Those are the guys paid to make the difference. Messi in this series, again, 0 goals, 0 assists. In his last 4 games across all competitions, 0 goals, 0 assists. In the Atlanta United series in the MLS playoffs last year, he got 1 goal in 3 games and got 1 assist in 3 games. That's not good enough production. And look, I don't think this is a secret. And I think even the Messi stands or the Messi fanatics have to come to terms with this. Messi is getting older. Father time is undefeated. At some point, Messi, for all his talent, is going to slow down. And maybe we're seeing it. Maybe we're seeing Messi, despite having the ability to still take games and put the team on his back. He's not going to be able to do that night in and night out anymore. He needs a collective. He needs the team to also.
He's always needed service, right? Even when he was at his peak, he needed people to get him the ball. I mean, that's why Busquets was signed, right? I mean, that's of the older signings, the biggest logic in all of them was Busquets.
The link.
The guy who spent years feeding him and providing him the opportunities, who knows without looking where he is on the field at a given moment and all the rest of it. I'm afraid Busquets isn't doing what he did in the first season when he came in.
He's not. 100% he's not. And look, funny enough, I didn't clip the video, which was foolish of me. I just ran out of time, and I meant to. There's a question that he's asked in the mix zone. You can see this on Miami Total Football's YouTube page. But there's a question he's asked in Spanish about the loss or just in general. And his response seems to allude to the fact that he won't be here next year. Like, the way he responds to it, I'll share this on socials probably tomorrow. He says something along the lines of, hopefully the club can learn from this so that in the future they can win a competition like this one. Essentially saying, hey, I'm probably not, I'm not going to be here next year. That's reading between the lines what you could take away from it. But his level has dropped. Jordi Alba's level has dropped. Look, Mascherano has not found the correct formula, right? We've talked about the players. Now it goes on the coach. The coach is inexperienced. The coach is still learning on the job, learning on the fly. Why he's here in the first place goes back to Messi, which we already talked about. But he clearly was outcoached in this series. Didn't have solutions. He tried to throw numbers forward in this one. He was aggressive. People wanted to see Inter Miami not be defensive minded. They were not defensive minded. They tried to play. They tried to push number forward. So he gets, credit for that. He didn't, sit back. I'm not going to say sit back, but he didn't take a more pragmatic approach. He tried to be aggressive. He tried to be the protagonist. It just ended up not working out. The hole was too big. That second goal of Vancouver by Sebastian Berhalter, to me, that was the backbreaker, because that made it much more difficult for Inter Miami here, not being able to give up a goal. And look, against LAFC, they pulled it off. They pulled off a miracle comeback despite going down early in that game. I said it, and I actually bet my other podcast co-host, which I don't know if you've met him, but we bet Peruvian rotisserie chicken, un pollo a la brasa, with papa fritas, French fries, ensalada, salad, the whole thing, the sauces, los ajicitos, whether Inter Miami would advance or not. I told him no, he's Peruvian. He said yes. Well, looks like I'm getting pollo a la brasa in the near future. I just didn't believe in the miracle twice. I just did not see it happening. Nothing in these last few games have been indicating that Mascherano was going to turn it around, that Inter Miami from the attack was going to figure it out. I mean, listen, in the last two series for Inter Miami and Concacaf Champions Cup, they won 1 game. And that was with a tremendous, epic second half comeback against the LAFC. That was built on the backs more of Messi's individual brilliance and the collective heart, determination. It was not necessarily quality soccer. It was not necessarily incredible tactics. It also had a doses of fortune, because there was a handball that gets called against LAFC on a bouncing ball that leads to the penalty kick that Messi puts away. I just didn't see it happening again. And tactically, there's a lot to be desired from this team. I mean, you touched on maybe it's time for Ian Frey to become the starting right back. Maybe it's time for Yannick Bright to be cemented as a starter next to Sergio Busquets. Maybe it's time to push Jordi Alba into the maybe a more winger role and have Noah Allen play as well. I don't know. There has to be something more than this.
There has to be. Look, their team has got to be younger and more mobile. I mean, not even going into like what they can bring in terms of new players or move out players. Just with the roster that they've got now, he's got to choose a younger, fresher side. He has just even for those games that they will win in MLS. As much as this feels like a crisis, you can still see them go and beat a team like New England Revolution 4-1 or something like that. They'll have those days still. They're going to get to the playoffs. I don't think there's enough quality there. And I think when you look at that team, ideally before the Club World Cup, you bring in some new players, because for me, I mean, that's a whole nother topic in itself, isn't it? But
we'll spend a whole other show on that if we dive into that.
Yeah. But the risk after last night, I'm thinking, if that's Vancouver Whitecaps, total respect for them, no disrespect, but they're not Porto and they're not Palmeiras and they're probably not Al Ahly either. But that could be a very, very tough one. Be careful what you wish for when you decide to become a global brand, because the whole world is going to be watching you play against Porto. And if you play against Porto like you played against the Vancouver Whitecaps in those two games, you will be on the end of a scoreline that the whole world will notice.
I think that's one of the biggest concerns for a lot of Inter Miami fans after last night is the Club World Cup is around the corner. We're officially on May 1st. Club World Cup's in a little bit over a month. And I mean, there's not a whole lot of help coming for Inter Miami. They can make some signings if they choose to. Although they have to figure out, the MLS financial aspects of it all. But there is concern about how that Club World Cup will go for Inter Miami, given how they're playing. Raymond Docott, I think this is the first time Raymond comments here. He says, I love listening to your show. Balanced and analytical. The rest of the podcasts are run by Messi fanboys and mostly idiots. Well, we appreciate that, Raymond, very much. Simon, I want you to hear, and I want the listeners to hear, a couple of sound bites from Vancouver Whitecap players. One's from Tristan Blackman, the center back. One's from Daniel Rios, the Mexican midfielder. Mm-hmm. One in English, one in Spanish, but they both get to the same point. And I think that's where we'll take the conversation next.
You guys knew they would come at you. You guys knew they would probably create some chances. Yeah. What was the game plan? Was it about outworking them? What was the tactical game plan?
Yeah, I think throughout this season we've made it a point to outrun and outwork teams. And I think for the most part we've done that every single match. If you look at the numbers, high-speed distance covered generally. Can we outwork teams? Like you said, obviously they're going to create chances. They have quality players, but we're going to create chances as well. And we showed that we can be dangerous in the attacking half. We have so many guys, on the score sheet every week, creating opportunities for us. So I think the base is outwork and outrun teams as much as we can, and we have quality enough to create good chances. So.
Vancouver's game plan, the basis was outwork, outrun. Listen to Daniel Rios say something similar in Spanish post-game on Wednesday.
No, la verdad que Inter Miami lo hemos visto mucho. El año pasado me tocó ganarles cuartos de final y, bueno, gracias a Dios ahora tuve la oportunidad de regresar y volver a ganar el partido, pero sabemos que es un equipo que los últimos minutos les cuesta. Lo demostramos allá en Vancouver, que en el minuto 85 le hicimos gol y ahora en el segundo tiempo les ganamos también, pues por piernas, por decirlo así. Tienen un gran equipo, pero pues logramos sacar el resultado ahí.
We have to move. We gotta fight.
Les ganamos por piernas. I have to translate because we have English-speaking audience that doesn't speak Spanish, and they get upset if I don't at least paraphrase. So he said les ganamos por piernas, which essentially means we outran them, right? We beat them because we had more legs in us than they did. Simon, I mean, we can talk about the tactical approach from both teams, the effectiveness with which they each deployed their game plans, how well they did, the individual performances. But it goes back to the other point. This team needs more runners. It needs more than just this technical team that wants to knock the ball around and beat you through quality soccer and great magic from Messi. It has to evolve from this. And listen, I'm a guy, like if I was a head coach, I'd want a technical team, right? I'd want players profiles who are technical. I was raised that way, right? I was raised with the Latin American culture and that's just how I view it, right? Someone maybe like you is different, right? Grew up in England, maybe. Like
stereotypes of English football come out again.
You might rate a center back like Ryan Shawcross in their prime more than maybe someone like I would. Maybe, just as a random example. Ryan Shawcross, former Inter Miami defender. Shout out to Ryan Shawcross.
I tell you what, if Inter Miami played Burnley now, they wouldn't get a touch of the ball. I mean, most teams in England, most teams in England, even in the second division, play possession football these days. But anyway, no, I take your point. I think Jesper Sorensen, the coach of Vancouver, after the game, he was very polite and very diplomatic and talked about how it's impossible to stop Suarez and Messi, just to limit them and so on and so forth.
He did.
And he said, but there were a couple of quotes. I was looking for the quotes that got to the truth when I was looking through what he said. And there was one bit where he said, well, the second half, we found a lot of space to play in because they opted to leave guys up front and that created space in midfield. Well, they didn't opt to leave guys up front. Those guys just didn't come back, right? That's one thing. Those guys just
opted for themselves, yeah.
Yeah. The second point he made was they asked him, what did you tell the team at half-time? And he said, I told them to not stop running and just run and run and run forward, right? That was it. That was the tactics. That was it.
Those are the tremendous
and they did it. And you know what?
Tactics.
And credit to Vancouver Whitecaps, and this is a good sign for MLS, that when Inter Miami scored that goal early on, a lot of teams in the past would have tried to just hang on to that one goal advantage.
LAFC.
And Vancouver Whitecaps were like, no, our away goal changes this game. We're going to go and get one. And they went and they could. Brian White went close. They had a couple of chances. Pedro Vita had an opportunity, hit the post. They went for it in the first half as well. And second half, Inter Miami just faded out of the game.
And I think that was the right approach, Simon. And I'm not being revisionist here or saying this after the fact. I said this before the fact. If I'm Vancouver, I look to play. I look to get that killer goal that essentially ends this series, because if you sit back and look to defend and try to hit on the counter for 90 minutes against a team like Inter Miami, which despite its collective issues right now has enough individual talent to break you down, and you invite that type of pressure, they're probably going to break you down either via fortunate bounce, a fluky goal, maybe just individual brilliance. They'll find a way if you invite that pressure. That Vancouver did not fold is a testament to their character, which is we've seen throughout the entire Concacaf Champions Cup, right? They went down in Mexico in the quarterfinals late on, and then they found a goal afterwards to tie the series or tie that game and go through on away goals. So I mean, they have.
No, they're a very likable team, actually, aren't they? They are a very likable team, and I think a lot of people will be rooting for them in the final. But the thing I would say as well about it is that, you remember at the start, the Leagues Cup and those early games in MLS, teams were trying to work out, what are we going to do here? How are we going to stop these guys? There was such that hype and excitement that was around in the Leagues Cup time. It feels a long time ago now, but it was there. And teams were trying different things. And we saw good teams, like Orlando City come and just not get it right tactically because they didn't really know how to go about it. And they were too concerned with Messi and so on. Now everyone's seen how you do it. Everyone's seen it. Every coach of every MLS team is going to be watching film of those two legs and saying, okay, we might not be quite as good as Vancouver Whitecaps, but they're going to take a different approach. Columbus Crew, next time they play Inter Miami, are not going to be cautious. They're going to go out and they're going to play that kind of Columbus Crew style of soccer and take the game to Inter Miami. San Diego, they love playing through their wingers and running at defenders and so on. There's plenty of teams in Inter Miami, in MLS who can do damage to Inter Miami, and they've seen how you do it now. That's a factor.
Kalir X01 says LAFC did it in the first leg. Inter Miami has to play the New York Red Bulls this weekend, which is a very team that likes to prioritize the physical aspects of the game, the hardworking, the
Pressing.
outrunning, the pressing, being a nuisance. Simon, we're going to start wrapping up because we're almost hitting your Cinderella time. But let's listen to Mascherano here because Inter Miami needs to get out of it. They didn't just lose this series. They've been struggling over the last few games. They're in a bad run of form here as of late, not scoring, struggling to find chances, and of course, not winning the big games. So let's listen to Mascherano, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Siempre lo he dicho, que había que estar preparado para cuando venga la mala. Y bueno, ahora estamos en la mala y hay que convivir con esto. Es muy fácil convivir con la buena. El tema es ahora salir de la mala. Y seguramente para salir de la mala hay que ponerle lo mejor. Lo mejor hay que ponerle. Sabemos que tenemos que hacer más, que con esto no nos alcanza, pero de mi parte no me van a ver nunca señalando a nadie, porque no soy así. Aparte, creo que lo mejor que tiene el fútbol es el jugador de fútbol. Es lo mejor lo que tiene y creo profundamente. A veces las cosas salen bien, a veces mal. Trataremos de seguir buscándole la vuelta para mejorar, pero estoy más que convencido que es ahora donde más lo tenemos que ayudar a los jugadores, donde hay que salir de esto y a mí, digamos, me ha tocado durante toda mi vida deportiva vivir muchas más de estas situaciones que de las otras, así que es algo normal, común y que la verdad que hasta te diría que me gusta el desafío, más allá que jugamos para ganar, me gusta el desafío de poder salir rápido de este momento.
He ends that long soundbite by saying he likes the challenge. He likes the challenge of having to come out of this bad moment. He talked a lot about helping the players come out of it. He talked in the beginning about he had always said that things were going well at the start, but that he always warned that there would be a bad moment, and that they're living that bad moment now, that bad present. Simon, when a bad result like this happens, maybe in a lot of other parts of the world, the head coach does not continue. I think everyone can kind of deduce that Mascherano will continue as head coach. I don't think he's going to get the axe between now and this weekend.
No.
But if he is sticking around, right? What can he do with this current roster? Forget about reinforcements for a second. Right now, with this roster, what are the adjustments he can make? Starting lineup, if they had a do or die game this weekend, what does he do? What changes does he make? I can't imagine, again, he trots out the same thing we've been seeing, right? So what adjustments could we see in this lineup?
Well, I think he has to inject legs and speed into the team somehow, right? He doesn't have many great options on that front, but we've seen recently, for example, Ian Frey make great attacking runs down the right and put great crosses in, and really start to look at home in that position. I was actually surprised, even though he's not, what?
I'm letting you finish. Go ahead.
I was actually surprised he didn't start, really, because I thought,
He was never starting over Chelo. Never.
No, we're not. But I would start. I would make that change.
I
will make that change. I would make that change. Yannick Bright, again, also not the fastest in a lot of ways, but he will do the work and do the physical stuff that if you're going to play Busquets, which I would still actually at this point start to question, actually, but if you were going to play Busquets, put Bright alongside him. Redondo is somehow managing to look as though he's 37 or 38 at the moment. I mean, he's been a big disappointment.
He's been a massive disappointment.
And I would also, I'm not saying that Kremaski is the answer to Inter Miami's problems, but he will run. He will work. He will chase players
Simon, don't
down.
say that. Don't say that, Simon. Kremaski has his strengths, but I don't rate him. I think the third goal.
I'm not saying you're telling me to work with the roster that we have, right?
So I'm gonna give you some adjustments now, and and I know this is, I will raise my hand here for some of the viewers, listeners, because I have been of the belief that Chelo is a smidge above Ian Frey at right back just because it's his natural position. Not because he's necessarily a better all-around player, just because he feels the game more naturally there. Whereas Ian Frey is very good. I've liked Ian Frey as a player from the first moment I saw him, but he's a center back playing right back. He doesn't feel the game as well there, in my opinion. But with what you see now, clearly it's not good enough, so you need to make some changes, right? It's clear to me that Mascherano had his players that he trusted in this early part of the season, which we saw in this decisive match. He has his players that he trusts. Players that he trusts couldn't get it done. So now with the roster,
by the way, Julian Gressel is a better right back than either of those two.
I don't know about that. He's a good crosser.
He is.
He's a good crosser. I don't know if he's a better right back, like in general, overall. But anyway, Ian Frey for Chelo again, I think is something that you've got to look at if you're Mascherano with the starting team. I think another thing you have to start looking at, Federico Redondo just can't be a starter anymore on this team. And I know he's been in and out of the lineup. It's been him versus Yannick Bright for that spot next to Busquets. It's got to be Yannick Bright. I know you want to have that clean build out, and you want to have players that are technical, and you want to prize being able to build through your lines.
It slows the game down so much.
But this team can't afford not to have a defensive pit bull terrier in there, breaking things up and winning the ball back for Miami. Some of the most promising attacking sequences last year were because Yannick Bright winning possession back and then quickly playing it to Busquets and then the ball being filtered up forward to create a chance. So I think those two are clear. I think, and I'm not I'm not big on it. I just don't think he fits the style. But again, the style has to change now. I think Fafa Pico might be a part-time starter for the near future in place of someone like either Tadeo Allende or Telasco Segovia. One of those two have to come out of the starting lineup because neither one has been particularly impressive. Benjamin Kromansky has usually been the next man up, especially on the right side. But I think he's very limited. The third goal is pretty much on him. He's dawdling on the ball at the back. He then tries to play a clip pass, ends up hitting a Vancouver Whitecap player in the head and quickly comes back the other way. But I'm not saying that, that this game's on him, but he has, I just don't see a lot or don't see enough in him. But you're right. He does put in the work rate. La entrega is there. Other than that, man, I mean, do you make Messi a false nine? It's either Obando comes in for Suarez, you stick with Suarez, or you make Messi a false nine, you put two wingers next to him. I don't know. Clearly, there's not a whole lot. And, Mascherano had an interesting quote in the lead up to this game. He said, essentially, like, we're not going to invent anything. The sofa goes in the living room. The refrigerator goes in the kitchen. We're not going to invent, put players out of position and do all this hunky-dory, funny stuff. But I think they have to tweak stuff. I think it has to be tweaked.
I was going to, if I'd have got to beyond the defense and central midfield, I was going to suggest Ogbonna to start instead of Suarez up front. And here's why. Because that conversation you have with Suarez isn't you're finished, goodbye, leave the club now. It's you're under contract and you could be a great sub to be bringing on for the last 15, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it's
but
tough to swallow that pill,
can stretch a defense, can run at people, can cause problems, can do some of the things that we saw from the Vancouver guys and open up a little bit of space maybe for a Messi or other people to operate in. And the other reason why you want someone like Bright in there to get the ball moving through midfield faster is, yes, it's difficult to mark Lionel Messi, but it's a lot harder if you're on your heels, yeah? It's a lot harder if you're backing off and there's a quick transition play. And that never happens with Inter Miami because it's so ponderous that the ball goes played really slowly. Somebody needs 2 touches to control. Then they play it sideways to Redondo. He dawdles around on the ball for 5 minutes, and then it goes, it's got to go bang, bang, bang through the midfield. And then you're playing it into Messi, and things start to happen then. And that's what was happening at the start, that in that Robert Taylor Leagues Cup sort of time. Busquets was moving the ball to Messi very, very quickly all the time. So was Jordi Alba, and it's not happening at all now. It's not happening at all now.
It's definitely reduced a
And
lot.
I would consider playing Noah Allen at left back and letting Jordi Alba be a left winger. I really would.
Yeah, maybe. Again, I think they need a little bit more than what they're getting out of their wings right now. So, I mean, I said Papa, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Jordi on the wing. Noah Allen
So
is a
there are
left back.
options. Yeah, we talked about probably 6 or
But
7 options
it's
there.
moving a lot. It's moving a lot of pieces, though, right? Like, and that's what we're gonna wrap up with that question for this weekend. So you can give me your starting lineup for the week. That's how we'll wrap up the show. But I do want to read a couple of comments before we do that. And this is a good question. Mitch says, "Does Tata's 4-3-3 fit this team better? Playing Messi out wide seems like a logical tactical change that he can easily make." I mean, I'll ask you something based off of Mitch's question. And this is obviously, hindsight is 2020. Did Inter Miami get it wrong? And we can understand the reasons maybe why the decision was made. Did they get it wrong in moving away from Tata Martino? I know the official explanation was personal reasons, but I don't think many people buy that, especially when Mascherano was the head coach that was lined up a few days later. Was that a mistake? Was that a big mistake, in your opinion?
Well, we were told it was for family reasons, yeah. If it wasn't, it was a mistake, yeah. 100%. I mean, tactically, we didn't always agree when we were sat up there being, the wise guys in the press box with every system that Tata employed or every approach that he took. But and he got things wrong, particularly towards the end of the season. But tactically, he's a more experienced coach in a lot of ways, yeah?
Absolutely. I don't think it's even close.
Mascherano's at the start of this is his first club job of any significance.
I think that will be the biggest potential decision that happens with this organization. That coaching change will be the biggest in this project. That will be the biggest move that happened during the course of the project. If they bring
I'm not sure if Tata had stayed. I'm not sure that Robert Taylor leaves. I'm not 100% sure that,
Julian Gressel definitely doesn't leave. Julian Gressel is staying. Julian Gressel is getting minutes. Look, I think obviously the playoff series was damning, and it really, really, really put a dent into things. But let's not forget that Tata Martino, with his MLS experience, with his veteran know-how, had Inter Miami without Lionel Messi for large parts of 2024, winning games. And they ended up setting the points record for the regular season. I mean, that's a testament to consistency. That's a testament to winning games. And this is not revisionist.
And they're
I thought it
currently
was a mistake.
fifth in the Eastern Conference?
Right now, yes. But I thought it was a mistake then. I think it's still a mistake now. You can't go from, probably the top type of coach that you could get to fit your project to a coach that doesn't have any experience. That was a very big decision. Now, if there's, politics at play behind the scenes, Messi and the like, I mean, then obviously that influences things, but that goes back to our beginning point.
It just feels a little bit like some of these decisions and some of the players they brought in, for me, it a little bit alludes perhaps to a disrespect for the competitions that they're playing in. Because if you're a big club in South America or Europe and you're going for titles, you've set your stall out that you're going for titles, you don't appoint a rookie coach, do you? Real Madrid have Ancelotti, right? Manchester City have Pep Guardiola. Liverpool went for a guy who'd done well in Holland and he's delivered for them. You don't. If you're a club that's going for titles and a big club, you don't go for those kind of coaches. I'm not saying that Mascherano can't become a coach or whatever, but you would think he'd serve his time at a club where he's not expected to win things. Right. Here he's expected to win things.
Clearly he's here because of his relationship with Messi and the like. Clearly. All right, Simon, to wrap up, because we're passing due here on your expiration date. All right, Inter Miami plays the New York Red Bulls this weekend. We're not going to do a whole analysis. We're not going to do a whole breakdown. But just to kind of start the conversation of what comes next, I want a prediction for your starting lineup on Saturday, right? Saturday. Yes, Sunday. No, Saturday. Your prediction for the game this weekend at Chase Stadium, right? Because there's going to be some rotation. Is this the game where you bench Suarez? What do you think Mascherano does? And I want a prediction from back to front. Back to front.
I'm not naming the whole 11, but I think in terms of the changes, well, it doesn't really matter.
Ustadi, all right. Ustadi, I mean, we're not going to see Calendar, so Ustadi will be in goal.
Yeah.
Ian Frey or Cello?
Frey.
Frey will start. Okay. Your center back duo. He took out Peluca Falcon from this game. Peluca had probably one of his worst games in his short stint with Inter Miami in this one. He was at fault for the first goal, 100%. Busquets berates him. If you watch the replay, Busquets berates him for not making the right tactical play. Instead of following the winger who was getting in behind, he decides to come into the middle where Noah Allen was already. So Busquets berates him. So does Peluca Falcon start again?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Noah Allen, that's still your tandem. That's the best center back tandem Inter Miami has.
Probably. Although he could bring in another central defender, maybe Alvarez, and play Noah Allen at left back.
Okay. I will say Peluca, Allen, and Jordi. I think it stays. I think the tweak will be Ian Frey. Midfield, same 4-4-2.
Probably, yeah. I mean,
okay, so who starts on the right? Is it Allende again? Because Allende has been finding chances but not putting them away. Or is it Fafa? Is it Benja? Is it Jordi Alba on the left?
I think he brings Kramaski in for this one, just for the energy against the Red Bulls. Press inside, high energy game. You know, Kramaski, I have my reservations about him overall as well, but he certainly brings you effort and work rate and energy. So I can see that against Red Bull.
I think I agree with you. I wanted to say Fafa, but I'm going to put Fafa on the left because he's got the speed, and I think the Segovia and Allende just haven't been showing enough. They don't fit the possession base, not the possession, the technical style, that Inter Miami is looking for. But again, you have to start tweaking things. Midfield duo, I guess, Busquets and Bright, right? That's pretty straightforward. Redondo's not going to start again, right?
No. Yeah, unless Busquets gets the rest. I mean, he always seems to be the one who doesn't get rested, though, doesn't he, Busquets? Like against Dallas, he was the one who was on the bench. So it always seems to be him. But, they're not ready to move on from Busquets yet, and they don't really have a huge amount of options. So Brighton, Busquets, yeah.
Brighton, Busquets. Do you agree with me with Fafa on the left, or do you think that's where maybe you put in Jordi Alba for your lineup? Well, I'm just going off of what Mascherano.
I was playing Noah Allen at left back and Jordi Alba played as a left wing. Yeah, basically left midfielder who doesn't have to worry as much about getting back.
Fair enough. Up top, Messi and Obando.
Yeah. Or, because I haven't used him on the wing, I could play Fafa as a sort of roaming striker as well. I mean,
so now you have no height. You have no height up top. You've got the shortest strike tandem in Major League Soccer, maybe in all of North America.
But I quite liked what I saw from Ogbana against Dallas. Certainly in flashes. I'd give him another. You know what? He's the kind of striker.
With the starting team. This is the game to do it.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy, and that Red Bulls defense can wobble at times. I think it's kind of striker who could wear defenders down a little bit, and then if you do bring on another striker, Suarez probably in the latter stages of the game, he might have done a good job of wearing them down before you bring on that player. So yeah, okay, let's go with Ogbana.
All right, so that
kind of near a consensus team here, Franco. I mean, this is out of keeping with. I know you wouldn't do the Noah Allen thing, but.
I mean, I'm going with what I think Mascherano does. I mean, if it was what I would do, then maybe I move more pieces like you're doing, because you're moving essentially 3 pieces, right? You're moving.
Oh, I was picking what I'd do.
Oh well, I was going with what Mascherano does. I mean, I think people would prefer to hear what I think Mascherano does than what I would do. I mean, what I would do is completely different, right? Maybe equal more moving parts. But all right.
What does Mascherano do? Okay, just quickly go over that. Right,
he said he wasn't going to do the 11. Now he's like, oh, I'm going to do my 11 and I'm going to do Mascherano's.
No, he won't do the Jordi Alba Noah Allen swap that I was talking about. He won't do that for sure.
I don't see that happen.
No, and he likes. I think he's got a thing about Noah Allen at centre half that he likes the idea of having
himself
small centre defender. Yeah, exactly.
So did you want to do it? Are you gonna? Is that it?
No, that's it. But pretty much.
Yeah. All right. So we will leave it there. It's been a good show. Thank you, Simon, for joining us. I know we went past time by a little bit, not too much. I didn't keep you up too late.
No, it was great.
It's always good to have you on. It's always nice to hear your. I was gonna say majestic voice, but I don't know if majestic's the right word. There's a better word for it. But it's awesome talking footy with you again. Thank you for coming back. You're always welcome to join us. I like
the one-on-one aspect of it. It's nice now and then to do that, I think.
Absolutely.
On the Burnley podcast that I do, we usually have 3 or 4 of us, and every now and then we have 3, we have 4 or even 5 sometimes, which gets too much. But every now and then we have just 2 of us, and it's really refreshing. It's really nice to do it like that sometimes. Yeah.
Have a nice back and forth. Simon, you were so good to talk to you about football, which I always tell you this, and I don't say this lightly, and I don't say this just to make you feel good. I have not done as good of a job with the comment section as I would like. Normally, I'm reading the comment section often, but today, because we were having a nice conversation and we were flowing, I just didn't get to it as much as I would have liked because there was a lot of comments, a lot of opinions, a lot of takes about the state and future of Inter Miami, which we will see. We'll see what happens going forward for this organization. We'll see how the Messi project...
Do you want to pull a few comments? I don't mind 5 minutes on the comments if you want to do.
Simon's all in now. Simon's like, give me another half hour.
No, I don't mind it. Seriously, if people are sending comments, I don't want people to feel they've been ignored.
Oh, no, I mean, it was just different comments throughout our conversations as people, chiming in on different talking points that we had. So it was just a bunch of different comments. I mean, they're probably time sensitive here, so I mean probably past a few years. Like, shoes are not hammers, which I think is the first time shoes are not hammers. Maybe he's not joining us, but it's the first time they have commented. On top of having a new coach, every team knows that Alba will cut it back to Messi in the box. It's so easy to defend now, and insane that he still tries it with 5 players in the box surrounding Messi.
It's a good observation, that, yeah.
It is a good observation because I mean, us.
We've seen that. You can picture it right now, okay?
Well, and we've talked about that as well. That it does seem that at times the team tries to force it to Messi too often. I actually asked Busquets yesterday about, are they too dependent on Messi? Did he feel they were too dependent? And his response was, whenever you have Messi on your team, you have to find him without being over reliant. But yes, you want to feed him. You want him to get the ball often so he can create his magic, etc., etc. So. Let's see. What else do we have here? It's a lot of comments, man. So Bruni says, can we trade Mascherano for Nancy? Luis Barrios says, Miami needs to do something radical. I'd say do a Pete Rose. Put Busquets as coach and player. Tom had maybe, and I didn't read it. I did highlight it earlier. I brought it up, but I didn't read it because you were talking. Tom says, to be honest, I'm losing interest in watching Miami. Ooh. I mean, this team is nowhere near as exciting as the Tata team. Tata team was high octane, get numbers forward, possession by 1,000 or death by 1,000 touches in possession, and then some chances. This team, it's unclear what the identity really is. David Fawn says Frey over Cello any day, period.
Agreed.
Tom had another hot take. I may be in the minority here. Bright wins balls, but his net gains are pretty minimal and his passing is pretty bad. I take Redondo over Bright. I think you're in the minority there, Tom. Nader Sanchez says Messi will play with Argentina versus Angola in November. This is not good because this will be during the playoffs. No way he will miss it because of the outrage if he didn't. Brad agrees with us. Yeah, Obando needs to start. At least he can hold up the ball. I think that's pretty good. I think I got a bunch of them. Brad says Suarez will start. He'll come off at halftime against the New York Red Bulls.
I mean, that is the other option. But I always think that if you've got a player who doesn't have the legs for 90, use them for 20, 25 at the end.
One more from our colleague Juan Arango in the comment section. Juancito. My goodness, Simon's face. Juan Arango says Messi negotiated with Chiqui Tapia to get Mascherano, and it was perfect chance to get rid of him at the Argentina U20s. Argentina media even saw Messi and him talking at Argentina camp. A lot of politics at play. With Messi and this Inter Miami project.
I did have a couple of people message me yesterday when I was making some critical comments about the Inter Miami performance and say, did you actually watch Mascherano's Argentina under-20 team? And I'll be honest, I watched quite a lot of soccer. No, I didn't. I never saw Argentina's under-20 team. But everybody I've spoken to, everybody I've spoken to said it didn't go very well.
It did not go well. There was a lot of criticism for him. Poor performances, poor results. I actually think they made it to the Club World Cup as a result of someone being disqualified or something along those lines. My memory is a little shaky on that, but something along those lines.
Juan Arango, technical director.
Jorge Mas is going to call him up to draw you. Hey, Juan Arango would definitely draw the line in the sand. Definitely would draw the line in the sand. All right, we'll leave it there. Simon Evans, thank you so much again for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on. We don't do it often enough, but I know you're a busy man over there in Hallandale. If you guys live near and around Hallandale, you might see Simon out and about.
Anyone on the border of if you see it's usually got a baseball hat on, but you'll see me trudging around the streets in various soccer tops at strange hours, getting my walks in. Yeah, on the Hollywood Hallandale.
Yeah, Simon does like to walk at random hours. Like maybe he's going to go for a walk right now, which is why he's been trying to get off the podcast because he's got to go get
Nashville. Remember Nashville?
That was a good time. I and you let me stay with you, so a lot of love for you, Simon. We go way back. You were there when I was but a young pup trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing in this field, in this sport, in this country. I consider you a friend as much as a colleague.
Likewise.
And we have a media game coming up soon.
I'm skipping it this year.
No, where are you going?
No, I had to. I'm gonna focus on getting fit for the 2026 version just before the World Cup. There's a gig I promised I'd go to. There's actually. Do we have any Uruguayan listeners and viewers on this show?
For sure.
So there is a French DJ, producer, electronic music guy who I really like his stuff. The style of music is like they call it French touch. It's kind of chilled out electronic stuff. And the artist is called Kid Francescoli, right? And he's from Marseille. And he's named after his band after his boyhood hero who was Enzo Francescoli. Yeah. And Suarez is watching.
Shoes are not hammers as Suarez is watching LOL.
Enzo Francescoli, named after, he was a hero of a lot of Marseille fans, brilliant player for Uruguay. And this guy's he's done an album called Italia 90, and he's got football themes and all this kind of stuff. I've never seen him live, even though he's like constantly on rotation on my Spotify and everything. He's playing that night at Zeze, isn't it? It's called the place. Am I pronouncing that right?
I've never been.
It's like a hipster joint in Wynwood, you know.
Yeah, definitely not my my scene, Simon. But I'll go with you if you like.
But I'm going to do a podcast with him about music and football and the mixing together of the culture and so on. It's the first one I'm going to do about that topic, and then I'll try and get Fade on for the next one, But
there you go. Of course, bro. Of course, you got to get Fade on there, man. let Let me
He's a
start playing
football
some-
guy, isn't he? He was, or was
Yeah,
he
yeah.
just taking advantage of the stage at Copa America? He's
Probably a little bit of both. But I mean, he's of course Colombian. He likes his national team, and he likes some football. Of course, absolutely. Fade all day. I'm not Colombian, but I love myself some Fade and some Karol G. Some Karol G too. Big reggaeton guy. Big reggaeton guy. All right, we'll close it out there. Simon, thank you again for joining us, my
Thanks for
friend.
inviting me. Yeah,
We will-
and thanks
we
for
will-
guys for all the comments and stuff. It's great.
We will see you soon. We actually, I'm going to add this really quick. We have a commenter, frequent viewer named Mike V. He was in the comment section today. Normally, he leaves a lot of like funny, witty things like Simon is wiser than, and then he'll come up with something that's just like really funny. He didn't do it this time. I don't know why. I don't know if he was,
Maybe I
he was
was
a little
too
shy
heavy.
because
Too
No, maybe
serious
it's-
while I was appealing to Jorge Mas to take back control of his club. Maybe I
no,
was just too heavy.
it's Simon the Wizard is what you're being called. I'll call you Simon El Sabio, Simon the Wise One. All right, this time for real. We'll leave it there. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to Simon Evans for joining us. Thank you for all the comments. Thanks for tuning in. If you're listening to this after the fact, of course, thank you for listening as well. We will be back. The podcast will be back next week. Can't promise I will deliver Simon again, but we'll be back next week to see how Inter Miami responds to this deflating and embarrassing elimination from the Concacaf Champions Cup. A failure in that sense that they didn't get to their trophy. We'll see how they respond starting this weekend against the New York Red Bulls. So for Simon Evans, I am Franco Panizo. You have been listening to Miami Total Futbol Radio. We will talk to you guys again very soon.